Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Snort, snort, snort.
Kogan. Drip.
Snort, snort.
I got the drip. Go.
All right. So we got so much to talk about. Really. We've got a ton to talk about. How about this? How about we start at the beginning, meaning going back to Wednesday, because I want to address something that apparently happened on my day off that I wasn't aware of, but happens all the time. As you know, there's a ton of people on the internet who just basically are out to always make me look bad no matter what it is I say and do. I'm constantly misrepresented, I'm constantly misreferenced, and I'm constantly held in a negative light, even though there's really no valid reason for it. Now, if there's a valid reason for it, that's one thing. But we've got a case here where literally, apparently, there's a group of people who are really angry with me, and I don't know why, because literally what they're angry at me for didn't happen, okay? Let's recap and go back to Wednesday's show, all right? On this very show, the Level 1 podcast back on Wednesday, I had a big segment about Elden Ring's DLC, The Shadow of the Erdtree. At that moment when I record the podcast, which starts around 11 a.m., okay, 11 a.m. Pacific time, all right, I talked about everything that was known at the time about this DLC. The price, the features, because we had seen some of those features shown in the release trailer, and speculation. At that point, 11 a.m. Pacific time, the trailer for this DLC had only been present on the internet for 4 hours. It had released around 7 a.m. There was no other information. Everything was speculation. Now, what ended up happening was, over the course of the day, more information was released because Miyazaki, the guy behind Elden Ring and other FromSoft games, was interviewed. And when he was interviewed, he gave a ton of additional information about the DLC that was all positive stuff that, number one, is exactly what Elden Ring fans are looking for, and number two, actually answered a lot of the questions that we posed together when we were talking about this DLC back on Wednesday. So let's recap. Originally, when we were talking about this Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, right, we were talking about some of the things that we actually saw in it, which included a new boss, some new gameplay elements, etc., who is Mesmer the Impaler, right? The fact that you can access the DLC, where when you find Mikella, and Mikella's body is in that rotted cocoon down in the Mohg's Blood Palace and stuff like that. So basically, we were discussing all of that in detail, lots of hype. And by the way, if you put it into perspective, the entire segment was hype. My entire border for Wednesday was Elden Ring. In fact, if I could just bring it up quickly, let me find it. Well, now, of course, I can't find it because I want to do it fast. Now I can't find it. Oh, here it is. This was my border on Wednesday. Now, if you don't think that I'm hyped for this DLC and I'm positive about it, why would I make my whole border characters from FromSoft games with Elden Ring at the top? If you're not even aware, which you might not be, Elden Ring was my runner-up for Game of the Year when it came out. It was a very close battle that year for what game was going to win Game of the Year for me. I love Elden Ring. I'm pumped. I even said in the podcast on Wednesday, hey, I'm actually going to be playing Elden Ring again in May because we've had a playthrough that we were doing of it last year. It was my second ever run. It was a magic-based run. We had gotten all the way up to the Corrupted Dragon, which is that optional boss, the Lich Dragon or whatever. We had beaten him, but we hadn't gone ahead past that. Basically, we froze after beating the capital city and then beating that Lich Dragon. We didn't continue on because there's other optional stuff to do. We didn't get to the Blood Palace or anything like that yet. But now that we know, excuse me, that the DLC is coming out June 21st, hey, now we have opportunity to say, let's maybe pick up the Elden Ring second run in May. Let's finish it up, or at least get close to the end and get to the Blood Palace. Let's beat Mohg with this new magic build, and then let's get set up for the DLC. And the other thing that we actually did, I praised Elden Ring, saying, this is a good game because you could respec whenever you want. So let's say we start this DLC and the magic build's feeling overpowered, or maybe immediately you find a new weapon and you want to try to use it, you could just go back and respec and use it. That's a great thing about this game, right? So I'm under the impression that most of the things I said about the Elden Ring DLC on Wednesday were very, very positive, right? The one thing that was a question mark for me was the price. It's a $40 DLC. That's the most expensive ever expansion for a FromSoft game, or I should say a Elden Ring, a Soulsborne style game. And in previous iterations, if you looked at the price of DLCs that they had released. I think the most expensive one had been like 20. Don't quote me on that because I might be wrong, and usually the DLCs would be around 10 to 15 hours long. So I'm thinking, man, if this DLC is $40, you've got to think it's probably going to be pretty lengthy. Like if the original game was $70, well, if it was 60, I can't remember. And the original game was, 80 to 100 hours long, then you would think that this DLC would probably minimum be 40 hours long, right? Maybe even longer than that, right? But again, my question was, I don't know. I'm curious, how long this DLC will be. Hopefully it's not a ripoff. Hopefully it's not, because we realize there's so much hype for this DLC that we're going to charge whatever we want, right? Now, I know for a fact that Elden Ring has been very inexpensive to buy. I just don't think it's been the digital version, but I know that Elden Ring's been inexpensive to buy because I've seen copies of it listed online for very cheap, like 10 or 20 bucks, okay? But what happens is these digital marketplaces overinflate the price of the games and never drop them. So during the actual show, I attempted to go into the store and see what's the price, and I couldn't figure it out, and people revealed, it's still 40 bucks. I'm like, wow, that's kind of a lot 2 years later to be charging 40 bucks for this game. All right. But actually, if you look online, you could get copies used for like 10, 20 bucks. I've seen it actually like clearance on sale online for like 10, 20 bucks new, but it depends on the time of year and where you're buying it from. Okay. But anyway, so this is what we talked about on the show on Wednesday. Very, very positive. I'm excited for this DLC. It looks great to me, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm already making plans to return to Elden Ring in May because of it. So that's where we left it, right? So yesterday, as you know, I check comments that are coming in on my videos from time to time. I have to approve a bunch of them. And I start to notice a pattern. All of a sudden, I start seeing a bunch of really negative comments coming in on my podcast from yesterday. I'm like, what is going on? Where are all these negative comments coming from? All right. And they're all around the same topic. Okay. You are misinformed about the Elden Ring DLC. Why are you spreading mass information about the Elden Ring DLC? What is this hot take that you have about the Elden Ring DLC? It's completely wrong. You're an old dinosaur who doesn't know what he's talking about, and you're just trying to create clickbait. What? So I went back and I looked at the video. The title of the video is like huge gaming news, Elden Ring DLC. It doesn't say Elden Ring DLC sucks. Elden Ring DLC is a ripoff. It doesn't say any of that. It's actually a very positive titling of the video. If you actually look at the description of the video, there's timestamps. It'll tell you directly where to start watching my segment about the Elden Ring DLC. Okay? So there's really no excuse for someone to be misinformed about what's said in the podcast. It doesn't have a clickbait title that's erroneous or negative for the sake of getting people to click on it, and you can easily access that segment of the show by looking at the timestamp in the description. And so I'm like, I'm really confused. So I continue to read the comments, and it's so ridiculous. It's like, so you're slamming the Elden Ring DLC for being $40, but how dare you slam a DLC that's 60 gigabytes in size, the size of the entirety of the map of Limgrave, DLC with 10 boss fights, 8 new weapons, blah, blah, blah. And it keeps going on. And all of the comments are kind of like saying this now. And I'm not saying one or two. There's like dozens of comments are coming in like this. And I'm thinking to myself, what happened? I'm like, I think I know what happened. Someone, of course, probably one of my idiotic haters, probably posted up an out of context clip or reference to my podcast, basically maybe taking the one segment where I was speculating and saying, man, I hope it's worth $40 because it could be a ripoff. Maybe they're going to just overcharge for it because you've been waiting for so long and they know there's so much hype. Now, that was one tiny moment of speculation amongst a giant segment of my podcast that was incredibly positive about this DLC. But how much do you want to bet that's the clip that was taken? And likely they went to, like, for example, what do you call it? They probably went to like a Reddit or something, right? Like a fan Reddit or something like that and posted it up there. So basically, these are people who are like adamantly looking to defend their game against people who slander it. Okay? Now, I'm not the biggest fanboy of Elden Ring. I'm a fan. I was very fair to the game when it came out. I had a ton of very positive things to say about it when it came out. I mean, it was my most played game of the year. Yes, I put more hours into Elden Ring in 2022 than any other game that year, including multiplayer games. I still played Elden Ring more. All right. It was my runner-up for game of the year. But I did have some criticisms of it. I think I have the right to fairly criticize the game, and I feel like I did fairly criticize it when it came out. I really don't feel like I was overly unfair to it. I just thought that there was a lot of things that could have been improved. That's not the point of this video, so I don't need to list them here. You understand? You can watch my review of the game that I made in 2022 if you want to hear those. But basically, to me, like, I'm like, so what really happened, right? And exactly, Agent Coop says you even started a second run. How could anyone say there's Elden Ring hate on this channel? But again, this is exactly the situation I live in. You guys got to understand, especially those of you who maybe are newer comers here, and you ask questions such as, why do so many people hate darksydephil? This is why. Because completely out of my power, completely out of the realm of anything that I've done wrong or can control, people always misrepresent me in the eyes of the public. And they'll say that I did things I didn't do. They'll say I said things I didn't say. They'll take things out of context, right? They'll take rage moments from me playing a night of fighting games where maybe twice I rage, and they'll say that was the whole stream, right? That's what they do. And so how do you combat that? When, sadly, people on the internet are so willing to become like this big defense force for the games that they're massive fans of, and they don't do any research. Because in reality, all these people that came to the video and watched it and attacked it in the comments, because the video now has like over 1,300 views. Just so you guys know, my podcast typically gets 300 to 500 views a day. That's it. If it's a more important day, maybe up to 1,000. This one obviously has big inflated views by the hundreds. So someone posted it somewhere and people came over to attack it negatively, right? So where did this come from, right? I hate to say it, people on the internet are far too leaning towards being so into defending things they like for no good reason, all right? You don't need to defend Elden Ring. Everyone knows it's good, right? I don't think everyone's going to sit here and say, wow, Elden Ring is terrible. Who's going to say that? It's objectively good. It may not be everyone's favorite game, but it's still objectively good. You don't need to go defend it, especially on a podcast like mine. So, you know, I don't get a ton of views. I'm not a popular guy. No one's really listening to my opinions as a revelation of something they didn't realize before. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't even make much sense to me that this would be a big thing. And I don't understand why people fall for it either. Because it's a trick, is what it is. It's, oh, you fell into the black hole of hating on darksydephil because someone tricked you into thinking he said something he didn't do. Because in truth, the things that, again, the comments people were leaving on the podcast don't even make sense. They're acting like I don't like Elden Ring. If you actually just watched the podcast, you would know I do. I say right in the podcast, I'm doing a second run, can't wait to get back into it, so many positives, excited to jump back in. How could you think I hate the game? Or I'm misrepresenting the game in a negative light on purpose for clickbait views? What clickbait views did I get? I don't even understand what they're talking about. But the thing that really kills me, okay, is a lot of the things that people reference to say, oh, you were wrong, is information that wasn't publicly available when I did my podcast on Wednesday. Right now, it's 11:26 a.m. This podcast starts between 11:10 a.m. At 11:10 a.m. on Wednesday, the 21st of February, none of the information about this DLC that people are using to reference and say, oh, you're wrong, was available. No one knew it was 60 gigabytes in size. No one knew the map would be the size of Limgrave from the original game. No one knew there were 10 bosses. No one knew there were 8 new weapons. No one knew anything. This came out in an interview with Miyazaki later in the day. I think it was IGN, but don't quote me on that. I think it was. But it came out and then it's like, wow, this is all awesome, positive information about the DLC, and it literally answers all the questions that we had about it. So now I'm even more sold on this DLC. If you're telling me it's going to be a minimum of the size of Limgrave. Oh, by the way, this is what sells it for me. Miyazaki outright said in the interview, this has tons of legacy dungeons. The major focus of the DLC is legacy dungeons. Like, that's what they worked on. Now, what was my favorite part of Elden Ring? the legacy dungeons. I wasn't really having too much fun in the open world. I felt the open world after, maybe Limgrave and what's the name of the magical area? I've already forgotten. And of course, I did like the capital city. But after you get through those areas, right? I felt like it was just kind of too redone, especially that whole final third of the game in the frozen area at the Land of the Giants. I didn't like that at all, okay? My favorite part was going into a dungeon that felt like it was Dark Souls or Bloodborne. Those were my favorite parts. They were hand curated by the developers of the game to be interesting, challenging experiences. I loved those. Give me more legacy dungeons, give me less open world, and give me less of the very randomly generated boring dungeons, right? They're not randomly generated, but they're ones that are very repetitive and boring, the ones that look like the crypts or the caves or whatever. I didn't really like those. Give me the legacy dungeons. And Miyazaki outright said there's a lot of these legacy dungeons in the DLC. You are preaching to the choir now, like that's exactly what I wanted. So now I'm even more pumped for the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC when it comes in June. Like, I feel like this is a feature of my year now. It went from being, okay, I'm interested, but I wonder what it's going to be, to, wow, now I'm actually really excited, okay? But again, why are people coming to my podcast telling me I'm misrepresenting the game, I'm hating on the game, this is a hot take for clickbait views, and leaving dozens of negative comments, voting the video down, and I'm like, what is happening? You tell me. It's nonsense, all right? And at least I'm happy now that we could talk about it today, and actually talk about more of the positives about the DLC, because I'm excited for it. But why does it have to be the result of a bunch of people coming and crapping all over me? Because you know what it is? Now there's another 500 to 1,000 people who hate me on the internet, right? They outright think I'm a jerk because I crapped all over Elden Ring. They didn't even bother to watch my podcast and see what I said. Someone told them I said it, linked it, and they just went right to the video and left a nasty comment. What kind of a mentality is that? What kind of a person can you be to judge someone before you've even said what they've said? You didn't even bother to click play to see what was said in the podcast, because there's no way you could watch that segment and come out of the other side of that podcast thinking that I hate Elden Ring and I'm crapping all over it for clickbait. It was not even present in the video at all, right? So anyway, I got it out of the way. Listen, I'm excited for the Elden Ring DLC. Really, I like all the additional information. 10 new bosses, that's a ton. 8 new weapons. I'm sure in those 8 weapons, there'll be 1 or 2 I want to try, so I might respec during the DLC and try them. That's awesome. Legacy dungeons are right up my alley. And if you remember Limgrave, that's the starting area of Elden Ring. That's the main area. There's 2 southern island areas to it that are optional, right? To the east, you go further and you get towards Caleb, but that's still considered Limgrave. And then there's the entire castle. That's at least, at a minimum, 20 hours of content, just the overworld. Now, if you're talking, there's dungeons and things in there. Remember, there's the underground well, right? There's that. And if there's more of those, just think about that. This is probably going to be 40 hours. That's great then. If it really is $1 an hour, I'm okay with that. Give me 40 hours of content for the $40 DLC price. I'll be very pleased. So, to me, everything is sounding great about this to me. Like, I really am excited and I cannot wait. I now feel like, I now really feel like we're going to be in a situation where this is a feature of the year. Coming back to Elden Ring in May to continue my magic run. Not necessarily finishing, because do we really need to go back to the Hallig Tree and do that with the magic run? We don't really need to. We can if we want to, but for us, it's just getting all the other content done and getting to the Blood Palace and beating Mohg, which is going to be a challenge in itself. Doing all that with the magic run is really the focus. So doing that by, say, the end to mid-June, and then the DLC coming out June 21st, you know I'm all about it, right? So very excited for that, and I hope that you guys will join me for that fun later in the year, all right? But as for these people who are misinformed, all I can say is please do more research before you come crap on someone. Like, I'm literally, of course, my first reaction is, oh, this is just a bunch of trolls. But then as I start to read more of the comments, I realize it's not. These are people who actually really like Elden Ring, and they're pissed at me for something I didn't do. Nothing I ever said. I'm really head-scratching. Like, why would you be so adamant to jump down someone's throat and defend something when you don't even know what they said? You just immediately go into defense mode before even watching the podcast you're commenting on. That's pretty insane. Anyway, that's the case. That's what happened. That's out of the way.
I got the drip going. 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 I got the drip going.
It's like a faucet that's dripping. You can't make it stop. So what do you want me to do? Have a mute button that every second I'm tapping the mute button just in case I'm gonna have to clear? Like, this is what I mean. These dumb kids. This is what it is. It's dumb kids.